My name is Tarik. I am a Black Panther.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and you knew Leonard Peltier at one time. Could you tell us about your experience?
Yes. When I was in prison as a prisoner of war, I knew Leonard.
Okay. And what was...
We were in a jail called Terry Hut, Indiana,
Yeah.
and then later when they sent Leonard to Marion, Illinois, I followed him by them sending me to Marion, Illinois. We were in the same unit in Marion.
Oh, okay.
So I knew him for a few years.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And how was the experience in that prison?
The prison, first of all, we was in a place called Terry Hut. That was a very terrible place.
Yeah.
A lot of killings was going on there, and so much so that they had to ultimately put stretchers along the wall so that they would have a stretcher, because a wounded person, when a person was wounded, they would put them on a blanket and drag them down the hallway. So that was not a very good thing to do. So that's why they put the stretchers periodically down on either side of the wall.
And from what year was this?
And this was in the 70s, about 77 to about 80, I think. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so how did you survive in that prison? And how do you think? How did Leonard Peltier? What was his? Do you think his experience there?
The prison was a terrible prison, matter of fact, and we had to really get everyone together and the different groups together, and Leonard was a part of that. We got the indigenous people, many of the black persons and Mexicans to get together to create a mechanism that would prevent us from a lot of fighting and killing from going on. To prevent a lot of killing from going on. So Leonard worked with us on that. And for about a year, we were able to live a relatively unstressful life in terms of comparative to how it was before. So Leonard played a very important role in that.
Okay.
Yes.
And what do you think of Leonard personally?
Leonard is, when I first met him...
Oh, wait 1 second.
When I first met him, Leonard, I was impressed with him as much as I was impressed with like Mumia Abu-Jamal. Leonard Peltier is a very intelligent person, and shortly after meeting him, you will come to realize that he is a very intelligent person. And so that's how we were. Matter of fact, and I should point this out, as I said, I was with him in Terry Hut and Marion, and then later I was with him in Springfield, Illinois. That's the last time I saw him, was in Springfield. And as I was going by a certain area, I heard somebody call Tarik. I turned around and it was Leonard. And Leonard was in the medical center having medical treatment done on him. And he said, Tarik, the Russians are here. And the Russians are here, and they're going to be here for visiting him for a whole week. And then later I found out that 11 million Russians had signed a petition requesting that Leonard be freed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I should point out, the night before that happened, that meeting occurred, the guards was outside of my cell talking about hell with Russians, we hate the Russians, this is America, we run America. I was wondering, why was they doing that?
Yeah.
And then the next day, Leonard told me that the Russians were visiting him, and that's why they had put that demonstration on outside of my cell. I didn't know Leonard was in that particular prison at that moment. So,
yeah.
So that's what happened with that. And so that meeting was the last time I really saw Leonard. Yes.
Oh wow, that's really good. And what would you like to tell the public and the politician about Leonard, and what should be done?
Okay, Leonard is an innocent person, and because he is such an impressive person, when you meet him, he has that effect on all the indigenous people.
Yeah.
And so that's why they wanted to remove him from their midst. It's not that he's guilty of having killed the 2 police. The authorities know that Leonard did not kill the 2 FBI in question, but they have him because they want to remove his presence from the indigenous people. And Leonard, as a revolutionary, is working to introduce a system of peace and a system where peace will prevail until the end of the world. That is what Leonard is working on, and that's what politicians don't want, because the present system offers them a chance to make millions of dollars, and this is what they want. And they don't want to bring about peace and use the monies for the people and that sort of thing. And Leonard represents that, So he is a good person, and that's why they are doing the things to him that they are doing.
Well, we have some politicians running now. Do you think they should be talking more about Leonard and Mumia? They talk about freeing political prisoners, they talk about Julia Assange, but they don't talk about Mumia that much, or Leonard Peltier and other Black Panthers that are still in prison. Do you think that should be pushed also?
Yeah, I think those politicians who are neglecting to do that, I know politicians who are pushing for the release of political prisoners, but the ones I know, they have included Leonard in their efforts to get the political prisoners free. So those politicians who are not doing that, I think they may have chosen a safe person to champion. That person's called Julius Assange, and they have chose to not champion the cause of Leonard Peltier and Mumia. So I think they should do that to convince their constituents that they are totally sincere about what it is they say that they're trying to do, and working on the release of political prisoners.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I work with the New York City Jericho Movement to free all U.S.-held political prisoners and prisoners of war, and also with New York City Free Peltier. And as people may or may not know, since this has happened a long time ago, tomorrow, June 26th, is the 48th anniversary of the incident at Oglala, which led to Leonard being imprisoned unjustly now for more than 47 years, because he was captured on February 6, 1976, after having fled to Canada because he did not think he could get a fair trial in this country. And he was right. He could not get a fair trial in this country. And he was extradited from Canada based upon totally false affidavits of several people. And so the Canadians believed the lies they were told, and they extradited Leonard. Now, ironically, Leonard's 2 co-defendants, Bob Robidoux and Dino Butler, had already been tried and acquitted of killing these 2 FBI agents on the grounds of self-defense. Leonard was not actually convicted of killing the FBI agents. He was convicted of aiding and abetting whoever killed the FBI agents. So if his co-defendants were acquitted, who was he aiding and abetting? We don't know to this day. And we do know that a lot of people, including people who actually prosecuted Leonard, some of which is in this flyer, they say, they're very clear about it. This is an ex-FBI agent named John Jack C. Ryan. And he says, when agents Collar and Williams lost their lives, it was a devastating loss to us agents. Emotions ruled the decision-making process and likely clouded the judgment of the massive team. We were driven to hold someone responsible for our loss. Through today's lens, Peltier was not treated fairly and did not get a fair trial. Now, this was going back to when Obama was the president. I respectfully urge you, Mr. President Obama, to grant the clemency petition of Leonard Peltier in the interest of the system of justice for which my 2 fellow agents died, and in the interest of reconciliation. That's a former FBI agent. So, you can see that the vendetta of the FBI is what has kept Leonard in prison all these years.
What made you get involved in the Leonard Peltier, to fight for Leonard Peltier's freedom? What personal...
Personally, I'm a very good friend with Paulette J, who is married to Bob Robidoux, who has been, involved with the struggle to free Leonard since the inception of all this. And she's still my friend. And she's, in fact, part of the ad hoc committee. Her phone number is on here. And this is a new ad hoc committee that has been formed to try to get Leonard home, finally, due to some problems that I won't go into. And so, we've been out here, and Bollette's been doing this for 48 years.
Didn't the former attorney general, prosecutor that prosecuted Leonard Peltier, he called for his freedom?
Well, how about the judge?
The judge?
Judge Gerald Heaney, United States Circuit Judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit. The United States government overreacted at Wounded Knee. Instead of carefully considering the legitimate grievances of the Native Americans, the response was essentially a military one, which culminated in the deadly firefight on June 26, 1975. And we know that that's true. And here's the lead prosecutor, James Reynolds, former U.S. attorney. Dear President Biden, I write from a position rare for a former prosecutor, to beseech you to commute the sentence of a man I helped put behind bars. Leonard Peltier's conviction, continued incarceration, is testament to a time and a system of justice that no longer has a place in our society. That is the guy who prosecuted Leonard. His name is James Reynolds, and he is a former U.S. state attorney. And then we have a nice quote from a comrade who is no longer with us, former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark.
Yeah.
And he says Leonard Peltier has committed no crime whatsoever. But if he had been guilty of firing a gun that killed an FBI agent, it was in defense of not just his people, but the integrity of humanity from domination and exploitation.
Thank you.
So I got involved with Leonard many moons ago because it was such an obviously very unjust conviction. And we also have to remember, because now we're living in 2023, that back in the 1970s, the press actually covered these events.
Yeah.
Wounded Knee and the occupation of Wounded Knee, which happened a couple of years before this incident at Oglala, was national and international news. You could watch it on TV. You could read it in the major press. This is no longer true nowadays. Everything is, not covered deliberately by corporate media. So, back in the day, we knew about this. I was only a teenager when this happened. But we knew about it because we saw it on TV.
Yeah.
We read it in the newspapers.
Yeah.
So, it was very, very clear that this whole incident in Oglala was, provoked by the U.S. government going on to sovereign territory.
Yeah.
And, trying to provoke a firefight.
Yeah.
Supposedly they were going after this young man named Jimmy Eagle for having stolen a pair of cowboy boots.
Yeah.
All right? Now, they eventually just, dismissed all charges against Jimmy Eagle when they decided to focus all their prosecutorial misconduct on Leonard Peltier. And his trial was a total railroad. We were not allowed to induce any of the evidence that was introduced on Bob and Dino's trial. They moved the venue so they would have this really right-wing judge who's known to hate Native people. And, they scared the jury by sequestering them and bringing them to and from court with U.S. Marshals and everything else, as if, the Native people were going to do anything to them, which was totally false.
Yeah.
And the Native folk were busy, organizing protests outside the courthouse, making sure they were in the courthouse, and supporting their comrade and their brother.
Yeah.
And they still are to this day. Tomorrow there'll be a big commemoration at Oglala for the 48th anniversary of this horrible incident. And they will be once again demanding the freedom of Leonard Peltier, just like we're doing right here, right now. And we'll be doing it again tomorrow.
And I think it's important that it's in the Bronx, too.
Yes, it is important that it's the Bronx, because a lot of people who organize in New York City don't really do any organization in the Bronx. And the Bronx is like the poorest borough in the city, has some of the most suppressed people in the city, and also has some of the most politically aware people in the city. So that's part of the reason we're here outside very historic Lincoln Hospital. That the Panthers and the Lords took over back in the day, and they ran the Lincoln Detox campaign right out of here. Dr. Matulu Shakur and the acupuncture, as a way to combat opioid addiction. Very successful. We finally got Dr. Shakur out of prison after many, many moons, and we're very happy about that, even though his health is not the best. But, you know, we're glad that he is out here with us. And we hope to have Leonard out here with us very soon. That's why it's very important that people put the heat on Biden, because he can do it. You know, Leonard has exhausted all of his legal appeals, and his only hope for freedom
and
is
all the
clemency.
candidates talk about all the political prisoners that the United States has, you know?
Yes, they should.
Yeah.
Everybody should be talking about all U.S. held political prisoners. You can go to the JerichoMovement.com if you want to get an example of a whole bunch of U.S. held political prisoners, because that is what we do and that is who we are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emma.
I hope that
From the
was
Bronx.
decent. From the Bronx. Boogie down.
Hi, what's your name?
My name is Paul Gilman. I'm with the Bronx Greens. I'm a Bronx resident, native of Queens. I've been in the Leonard Peltier movement for close to at least 23 years, something like that. I got involved sort of by accident. I was part of the School of the Americas Watch, a group trying to close the School of the Americas, which is a school of torture and murder. The U.S. Army runs in Fort Benning, Georgia. And we did this caravan ride to Fort Benning, Georgia from Queens as part of a massive protest, civil disobedience. And on the way down there was a Leonard Peltier activist. Two of them, in fact. And they set up teepees on the Great Lawn in Washington, D.C., so we had to stop there for a night and hang out. I got to meet a former director of the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, Ben Carnes. I don't know where he's at now, that's years ago. And next thing you know, I'm involved in the Leonard Peltier movement. And the thing is, the School of the Americas Watch is the U.S. imperialism funding and training Latin American troops to kill indigenous people, union organizers, Catholic peace workers, sectarian left, anyone. So they were slaughtering a lot of Indians, especially in Guatemala. They killed 180,000 of them. And then it turns out they're doing the same thing. They're committing acts of genocide here. And one thing, you know, you read about how slowly the Indians' territory is being corralled in and less, more and more is getting stolen from them. And they're not just doing that to Indians, they're doing it to us, you know. They're taking away our housing rights, they're gentrifying our neighborhoods. In a sense, you know, the Indians bore the brunt of it, and black people. But everybody who's not part of the ruling class is now being treated like cattle. They're being herded into things. You have the surveillance state, you have forced vaccinations, all kinds of things that you know, they're trying to take away our very freedoms. So the precedent in this hemisphere is what they did to the Indians and black people.
And Leonard Peltier.
And Leonard Peltier, he went, you know, the story has been told by other people. There's many other political prisoners also worthy of just as much support. Mumia Abu-Jamal is the most prominent one, but the other ones are every bit as great, and they go to the Jericho Movement. And it's just one of those things where everywhere I went, before I even got in the movement, there was Leonard. Then I met Leonard's lawyer. He became a close friend of mine, still is, Mike Kuzma. Hey Mike, shout out. And that's why I'm here, because
And
what they did to Indians, they're doing to us now.
Why do you think it's important for the people in the Bronx to be aware about Leonard Peltier?
Well, we're in Mott Haven. And Mott Haven is going to be an embattled neighborhood between the gentrifiers and the working class people who work here. The people who suffered the brunt of racist oppression live here. This is the last bastions, one of the last bastions of affordable housing, close to the business opportunities, close to inner city. So just like they put the Indians on reservations, eventually they're going to want to put us on reservations.
Well,
You know,
and Leonard Peltier, he's been in jail for 47 years. And
47 years.
And you organize this every year, and you
Not every year. For the last 5 years.
Last 5 years, you tried to done something, and today's the first time in the Bronx.
Yeah, well, you know, everyone is doing stuff all over Manhattan and Brooklyn, and what happened to the Queens, Bronx, and Staten Island. We're every bit the city. To me, Queens and the Bronx, because I'm a Queens native, is the city. Manhattan is the outer borough.
Yeah.
Brooklyn is the pompous outer borough.
Yeah.
You know, we're just as much the center, and these are the people who are going to suffer the most from the depredations of capitalism.
And what
so
would
they
you
have
like
to wake up.
and what would you like politicians to focus on? What do you think they could do for Leonard Peltier?
Well, legally, you know, in this bogus, capricious, and arbitrary legal system, they say all his legal remedies are used up. If they really wanted to free him, they could. And ultimately, now it boils down to the president pardoning him. So you can write, or granting him clemency, you can write to President Joe Biden. We know what a great lover of liberty and humanity he is, and just ask him to free Leonard Peltier. Ask him to grant Leonard Peltier pardon or clemency. I don't know what the difference is, but get him out of prison.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey